Hello, hello. Say hello if you're in the chat. Let's get the chat over here as well so that I can see. Cool. So zoom this back in. Yeah, say hello if you're here and you can hear me. Let me know. Not sure how many people we're going to have tuning in, but we will see. Let's just move some of this around. Yeah, let me know if you can hear me. We should be live. Hey Owen, how's it going? Let's just adjust this mic. Let's double check on Twitter. Cool. Hey Felix, how's it going? We'll wait for some more people to get in here quickly and we'll get started. Good, good, I'm glad. So if you just join in, we're going to be working on a micro-SaaS. I guess it's just a SaaS, but the scale of the project is quite small. So it won't be a huge code base, but we'll have some cool things to build. Hey Nathan, how's it going? Good evening. It is currently 10 to 9 in the evening here in the UK. Where is everyone else based? Hey Pedro. So let's talk a little bit about what Kernel actually is. Also, I've got a circular webcam now, so there's not a big block on the screen. I'm not sure. Maybe I could make it a little smaller. Let's see. That didn't scale in ratio, did it? No. There we go. Cool. Let's make it a little bit smaller so I'm not taking as much of the screen up. Nathan, North Wales, Cheshire, so same here. Nice. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about Kernel. So I have quite a few small projects that I've worked on in the past, and something that all of these small projects have in common is a dashboard of some sort for admins. So me as the SaaS creator would have, or the project creator would have some admin panel, some dashboard area to put some statistics or some key information about the project. But one thing that I don't enjoy doing in all of these projects, and they vary in stacks. Sometimes it's sometimes I have Filament projects which I have a dashboard already. Sometimes I have small command line scripts that run periodically. But one thing I don't like about these is having multiple different places to go to see all of these statistics. So, one app will have its own dashboard and you've got to have an authentication for that. You've got to have a user login. You've got to have the stats themselves. So the idea of Kernel is to remove the need for all of those individual dashboards, if you like, and instead have one app that can retrieve or receive all of that data. So maybe numbers and statistics, and show you it all in one clean, simple dashboard, multiple dashboards perhaps, but we'll start with a single dashboard for each user. We'll keep it very simple. So we'll make some notes. A single source of truth for all of your application statistics. That's the basic idea of the project. If you've got any questions, ask. If you're curious about the approach that I'm taking, if you've got any ideas, or if you think it's a crappy idea in general, let me know. But I'd quite like something like this for myself, so we're sort of going to be dog fooding it a little bit. So it's a single source of truth for all of your application statistics. Some applications don't need admin panels, and sometimes you just want to keep track of how many users have signed up or how many posts there are in a blog. So we're going to remove the need for that. So to begin with, we'll install some packages. So we're going to be using Livewire, Alpine, Rakesh. Is it a package? No, it's a completely separate application that you would connect to from your own app. We'll start with a PHP integration, but we could build a Node package to interface with the application. We'll be using Livewire, Alpine, Tailwind, maybe Filament. That might be cool. Each user has a dashboard page where they can see their statistics. You would interact with Kernel via an API. So we're going to be doing some API development and some testing there. And perhaps a first-party package for a nice developer experience. A PHP package that comes with a kernel class, and that kernel class can be used to send statistics. Rakesh, can we directly connect to a database? We'll get into that a little bit in a second. There's going to be some sort of some limitations that we're going to put in place at the very beginning for data protection reasons. The use case for myself is mostly just numbers. I want to know how many people were doing this on the app or how many people are doing that on the app. But we will we'll get there in a second. So let's get started. Let's head over to the Filament admin docs, and we have some more spam messages. Great. Let's remove. Does anyone want to become a moderator? If I make someone a moderator, you might be able to remove those messages as well. Nathan, maybe. I know Nathan's been to a few of the last streams, so that would be cool. Just so I don't get distracted by messages coming in. We'll leave it for now. So let's install Filament, because I've got a feeling we can leverage Filament here for the dashboard itself and build a SaaS around a Filament dashboard. So we've installed the package. Let's also we'll just create a SQLite database and update our env file. And run some migrations. Awesome, cool. Let's make a Filament user. So my name is Ryan. And nope. Let's go log into Filament. I am Ryan at test.com with a password. Cool. So Filament comes with a dashboard here, just like this. And it also comes with a lot of widgets for like graphs and statistics. We can see those in the dashboard section. So if we scroll down here, we've got chart widgets, so like line charts, We've got bar charts, bubble charts, donut charts, line charts, pie charts, polar area charts, radar charts, and scatter charts. We've also got just normal dashboard widgets, like custom ones that we can build, similar to this one here. But for now, let's remove those default ones. We will need to publish the config file. And what is the name? Is it filament config? Oh, that's it. We can't. We just have to put the number there. So over in the filament config file, we can look for widgets and just remove these default ones for now. So we've got a completely blank slate, which is wicked. You know, this is really simple. Next, let's figure out what models we want. So we've got a user. Presumably we're gonna want to split out each set of widgets with a sort of like site, if you like, or a source, a data source. And each of those data sources will have its own API key for interacting with the API. So why don't we make a model called source and head over to the migration. Let's actually get some stubs in here from Sparsy. And we can just run them like this. And let's regenerate that source model along with the factory and the migration. So we'll run that command again and head over to the migration. So what's a source going to have? A source is going to have a name. So the name of the website, the name of the the name of the website. That will be fine. We can also give the source a UUID, and that will be a unique field. And I've actually got a package for this. So it is Ryan GJ Chandler / Laravel UUID. And we can add this to the source model just by saying use has UUID, and we might need to index. And this just takes care of auto-filling that UUID column. So we've got a UUID, we've got a table string name, and timestamps, they are fine. And I've got a feeling that's all we need for now. Yep. Let's head over to source. This needs to be protected. Oh, this didn't import. There we go. So now that we've got a source, let's create a filament resource. So we can do PHP on filament resource and call it source. Before we do that, let's install doctrine dbal, and then we can just use source generate. And if we look at the source resource, it's added the name field for us. We don't need the UUID. That can be removed. And we can have this as a created app. And we'll keep the UUID in there as well. We'll make the name sortable, and we'll also make the created app sortable. So you can see we've got our sources in here. Let's find a heroicon or hero icon for this. Source data. Let's use database. Perfect. And let's also add this to a group so that it's separate from the dashboard. So we'll say navigation group, I believe, and we'll say administration. There we go. So now this is separated. It's away from our dashboard. Awesome, cool. So if we look at our new source, we've got the name field that has a validation. Let's also get pest in here as well, so that we can start writing some tests. So we need to run this command. We also want the Laravel plugin, and then it's a pest install. Wicked. So if we run our tests now, they all pass. We can remove the feature test and make sure we update our testing configuration to use an in-memory database for now. Awesome. Let's make a test with it, a pest test, and this will be Filament sources create test. I believe we use the terminology create source resource, create source. So we'll call it create source test. And a lot of people get confused on how to test Filament resources, but you don't actually test each individual resource as such. So we're not just testing the source resource. That's a bit of a mouthful, but we're not just testing the source resource. What we're actually testing is each individual page for that resource. So in this case, we're going to check that the create source resource can create a source. And the way we do this is just with normal Livewire testing. So we say Livewire test, and we tell it to use the create source component. And we can assert that it's okay for now, just to see this test running, and that passes, so that's great. And if we dig into the create source a little bit more, where are we? So this extends the create record, and well, a better way to do it is to see how these fields are hooked up. So you can see the input itself hooks up to data.name, and it submits the form. If we find the here, it says wire submit.prevent create. So just to test this component, all we need to do is, if I can find the test file, is set data.name to example. We can call the create method, and we can assert that the database has name example. We can run this this test, and it fails at the moment. So let's see. No such table sources. Name UUID update that creates that. And that is because I need to add the lazily refresh database. So now if I run these tests, it passes because it's created that source, and we can verify that with the test. We can also double check that it validates data correctly. We just do that in the same way. We say Livewire test for that component. We call the create function, and we need to assert that the Livewire component has some validation errors. So we'll say data.name is required. And if we run that test, it passes because we haven't provided a name, and it therefore fails. So this is how you test your Filament dashboards if you really wanted to. Very simple scenarios like this. So it can create a source and it validates data correctly. We can also test our index page. So we can write another test, and this is going to be Filament sources list sources test. And inside of this test, we can do a very similar thing. So it shows a list of all sources. So we're going to test that list sources class, and we'll just assert that we see something. Before we do this, we want to update our source factory so that we can generate a resource. So we'll just do 3 words, that's fine. We'll do a random number between 3 and 5. And we want it returned as text. Let's create a source over here. Laravel magazine, hello. Create a source, and we'll just assert that we see the source's name somewhere inside of this document. And if we let that run, that is taking a little while. Why does that take a little while? That is because I've said range instead of rand. So we want a random number of words between 3 and 5, so 3, 4, or 5. And we can see that that passes. There are very basic tests for Filament. It's very easily testable, thanks to Livewire, really. So we've got that. We've got our sources. Another thing that we need to add to that sources table is to ensure that it belongs to the current user. So we'll add a foreign ID for user. We'll make that constrained, and we'll cascade on delete. And we'll just refresh the database. And if we run our tests, it's going to have a go at us because user ID doesn't have a default value. But what we can actually do just inside of the source model itself, this is a public static function booted. We can hook into the creating hook, just like this, and receive that source, and set the user ID to the current user, and we'll get their key. Another package that I'm going to install is my Laravel helpers package. Helpers. This package is on GitHub. It just has a few helper functions. So if I index this, it has a global user function which correctly type hints the user model. So we can actually get key. Is there a like set relation? Does that work for fresh models? I imagine it just adds something to the relations array. Yeah, it does. That's fine. We'll just use get key here. And now if we run our tests, it still fails, and that is because we're not logged in inside of the tests. So another one that I like to add is inside of the pest.php function, we can just add a login function which returns a user and also accepts a closure. Which would allow us to configure the hey Kevin, hey Kusei. This callback would just allow us to configure the factory so that we can use the same function in different scenarios, like setting a user role or making sure that the user has a certain number of sources when we're testing. But for now, we will get the factory. If configure is not equal to null, we will invoke that closure and pass the factory through. And we will return tap, or as we'll tap. We'll say factory create. We'll get that user, and we can say that the user is acting, or the user is authenticated for the test. So back in our create sources, just up here, we'll say before all, login. And if we run this file, it still seems to be failing. Unknown format name. This is in generator. Is this to do with our user factory? Interesting. Why doesn't that work? It seems like that is the problem. User factory, line 13. It does seem to exist, the function. It just doesn't seem to work. That is interesting. I think it's a prop, not a function. Well, all of the faker accesses, if you like. I think the properties are deprecated now. Hey Devcast, how's it going? Thank you for stopping by. Yeah, I'm fairly certain everything is a function. We can try the property. It doesn't seem to work either, which is interesting. Just put that back. So this is going to have a call, and it goes to this format, this get formatter. Let's just DD this formatters perhaps. Just run that. Formatters is an empty array. If method exists this format, then yeah, how odd. That doesn't work. But the words one does. I don't think I'm doing anything wrong. Like if I DD this faker safe email, for example, does that work? That doesn't seem to work either. Ah, do I have to do it before each? Yeah, I think I have to do it before each. Yeah, okay, it's before each. Presumably the faker class hasn't been set up at that point. Okay, so we're logged in. And we can update. You'll see that our list sources is probably failing. Yep. So in our list sources test, before each one, we can log in, And we'll have to set up some relationships here as well. So on the user model, we can add a new function called sources. And this would just be a has many source. And we can do the same on the source model. We can just say that a source model belongs to a user. I guess I had the same problem once when using before all instead of before each. Yeah, I think it's just to do with when everything gets booted up, perhaps. If you do it in before all, Faker clearly isn't set up at that point. Not to worry though. Not to worry. Yeah, so a source belongs to a user has many sources. And then over in list sources, we can get an instance of that factory. And we can say that the factory has source factory count 2 perhaps. And then down here, we can tap this in here and get the that's interesting. I don't actually know what gets passed in here. I think it's a test component. Let's have a look. Call to a member function get key on null. Right, yeah, because we can't create sources until the user's logged in. Which is fine. Instead, we'll do after creating, we'll just do source factory create 2 of those. What do we get now? Call to member function get key on null. Okay, maybe a better way to do it is in our login function, do an after creating hook here, get the user and do test acting as user, and then down here we can just do return factory create. Yeah, hopefully that works. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so that worked, which is good. And what do we get? Are you going to continue your compiler project in Rust? Yeah, at some point I will get back to doing some programming language stuff. Right now I'm just enjoying Laravel, to be honest. I'm having fun working on some Filament stuff and projects like this. So dd func get arg0 class, that might be a bit more useful. It is testable livewire. So testable livewire, just say component. Component, or for each of the user's sources as source, we can assert that we see the source's name. And that passes, just like that. What's kernel? I came late. So, where's my notes? So the way I explained it is I build some apps or some projects for myself, and I want statistics for those apps. So imagine you've got your own SaaS, and you simply want to know how many users have signed up today. So what you can do is you can hook kernel up to your application and send that statistic over to kernel, and then you've got a dashboard inside of kernel. If you've got 3 or 4 projects, you likely end up just having a dashboard for each project. So then you've got a login for each of those projects. You've got all of these credentials and URLs that you've got to manage. But if you set up those statistics once and send them to Kernel, then you only have to log into Kernel, and you can just see everything inside of Kernel. You could even use it as a personal dashboard, to be honest, just to send random data to. Maybe you want to know how many times your npm package has been downloaded today. If you can get that number, send it to Kernel and let Kernel take care of it. Ways sounds great. Really looking forward to the compiler one. I'm a bit stuck on my side with type checking and stuff. Yeah, type checking is complex. There's lots of different ways to do type checking. Sade or Sade. Hey, good evening, Ryan. Good evening to yourself. But yeah, so Kevin, the basic idea is it's a single place for all of your application plural or singular statistics. So this seems to work perfectly fine, which is awesome. Another thing that we can do is probably add a global scope to the source. Add global scope, and we will just call this current users only. And something that I've been doing, I'm fairly certain I'm on PHP 8.1. Yep. Something I've been doing lately is actually making an enum called global scope. And this is a backed enum, so it has a string value. But I can add a case here, say current users only. That needs to be an equals. And then inside of here, I can presumably do current or global scope current users only. Can you cast enums into strings? Is that possible? Can you implicitly cast an enum? If I open Tinkerwell, eventually it will open. There you go. Let's just do example case hello equals hello. Can I do string example hello? Oh, no. Could not be converted to a string. Interesting. And I'm fairly certain we can't do this. Yeah, enum may not include toString. So then what if I do, let's keep that example, but if I do function test and say I want a string, just dd value, can I do test example hello? No. That is interesting, that. So I can't include toString on an enum, which means I can't cast it. Why is that? That seems bizarre to me. PHP enum cast toString. Let's look at the PHP docs for this. Enumerations, backed enumerations. Because I don't want to access value directly. That looks nasty. paint. This is an interesting thing that I found. I would have thought that you could cast it. Is the reason you can't override toString for serialization, perhaps? Value listing. What is Kernel? It's basically a glorified statistics dashboard. That's going to be the quickest way to say it. That's all it is. This is really weird that I can't cast to a string. Kind of annoying, actually. I thought that would have been a thing that you could do. Stats on anything. You can send whatever you want to it. Send any statistics that you want. Is it in the RFC? String? toString? toString? No. PHP enum toString. Yeah, that's interesting. Everywhere else that I've been doing this, I've just been doing value directly like that. But yeah, ideally I would have wanted to cast it to a string. That is annoying. Alright, we'll steer away from that for now. You could declare an array for your values instead. Yeah, but I've got enums. I want to use enums. That's a shame. Okay, that's fine. We'll just do it like this, and in here we receive an instance of the query builder, and I can just say where it belongs to the current user. And if I run our tests, they should all still pass. Which is great. Yeah, we're going to have to make a seeder. We'll just call, we'll use the database seeder actually. Let's just create a user. Email and password is going to be password. There we go. Admin. There we go, we're logged in. Yeah, no magic methods. That's kind of annoying. You know, it is what it is. Can't help it. How long have we been live? 45 minutes. Cool. So we've got sources. We've got some tests. We've got our dashboard. What next? So if I create a source here, example. We'll save. This has got a weird column label. So let's just fix that real quick. Label UUID, and ideally we'll use the UUID in the root as well, which we can do down here. So we can just do record UUID. 404 not found. 404 not found. I beg to differ. Implant. Not sure what that means. This is interesting though. I think I found a new bug. Like this. So it generates the URL fine, but it doesn't work there. I'm actually guessing the reason for that is it's not typing in the model directly, is it? Yeah, it's just saying record. It doesn't know how to fetch that record. This get record, resolve record root binding. Interesting. Resolve record root binding. Where new model get root. Yeah, we're gonna have to do get root key name. That is slightly annoying. I actually think we might be able to resolve that just by doing it down there. Public function get root key name, and we'll just do return UUID. There we go. Source model needs to be told to use the UUID as root key. In this case it does, yeah, but with Laravel's actual routing, you can use the colon syntax. I think we might be able to support that in Filament as well. That is an interesting one. Let's add that to my notes. We'll just say Filament. Look at resolving the model using the implicit root model binding syntax, custom columns, etc. Your package has an interface for it, by the way, since you wrote the function out. What do you mean by that? Not quite sure what you mean. Cool, so we can create a source, that's fine. The next thing that we want to do is handle with root key. Yeah, in my UUID package. Yeah, that is true. Well, I probably don't want to use that everywhere. I'm going to put it in place now, and we'll make a PR to Filament at some point to look at using the root syntax. So for now, I'll just leave it as is, get root key name. But yeah, you are right, I do have with UUID root key. But for now, we'll leave it like that. Because ideally, we should be able to customize this here. I thought we could, but we can't. Okay, so we've got our sources. Let's create a page for managing our API keys. And I've actually got another package called Bearer, which is here. And this probably needs updating for Laravel 9. The scroll on my mouse has stopped working. There we go, we're back. And this is a very, very minimalistic token-based authorization package. So we can generate a bearer token for the user to use. and then they pass it through just like this, and then we can slap it on any piece of middleware. So we could use this package. We could also use Sanctum, perhaps. I've not actually used Laravel Sanctum, but it does say simple token-based APIs. We only want one API token, really. Let's have a look. Does Laravel come installed with Sanctum these days? It does. Wicked. Does the user model have the trait? It does, has API tokens. API tokens. So we've installed it already, we've migrated. We're not authenticating an SPA. The default migrations are fine. And we can just create a token like that, okay? Cool. Cool. Okay, so let's do some custom filament stuff then. So we've got sources. We don't want a resource. We want a create form, and then a custom page. Maybe we do want a list view. It's an interesting. Or do we just use bearer? The only problem with bearer is like it doesn't hook up to a user or anything. You can look at the migration. It literally is just a token to say, hi, this token can access the API. You don't necessarily have to authenticate as a user. Let's go with Sanctum. Yeah, let's go with Sanctum. Cool. So we will actually create a resource for this. Is it personal access token is the name of the model? Yes. Personal access token. Yeah, Sanctum's already there. Also, we want to access the current user inside of the API request. So I've done make resource instead of filament resource. Let's do filament resource. Personal access token resource. It's trying to use this, but we actually want it to use this instead. Personal access tokens. And we can find a hero icon for a key, API, key, access, key, token, key, fingerprint. That is a cool one. Let's do fingerprint. Like so. And not got any relationship managers. We want to add this to the administration group, so protected static string navigation group equals administration. Ooh, finger hyphen print. There we go. Or do we create a separate group for this called API? Yeah, that might be better. We'll change the label as well to tokens. So protected static string label equals tokens, new tokens. We'll have to do the plural label separately. Oh no, just remove the S from here. And it handles it all for us. Now I want administration to be separate. This is also bugging me. Let's just change that to kernel. Changing the app name logs you out, does it? Okay, that was odd. Yeah, I want that to be kernel. I want the API stuff to be underneath the administration, and I can't actually remember if we can change the group sort, whether that's actually possible. Is that possible? We can have a look. Let's do some source diving. I've got a feeling it's gonna just be in a fixed order. So admin, resources, views, components, layouts, sidebar, group. So that's the component index. For each, get navigation as group items. So we go back to the admin package, Filament manager. We look for get navigation. Yeah, so it sorts first and then groups. So in here we can do static int sort equals 1. That will flip it around because this is null by default. So null as an int is 0, I guess, and that places it above, which is great. We've got our tokens, and let's go back to the Sanctum docs. Because we're actually going to have to customize how the saving of the tokens actually happens. So we can only show the user the token the one time. Which is fine, it's not a problem. So let's go to create personal access token. And if we have a look in here, we can see the create method. We can handle the record creation, that's fine. Call hook after create if another. Yeah, let's override this method. Like so. And we can get the token, which will be user create token, and we'll get the name plain text token. Well, the token's actually going to be that. That is going to return a new access token which we can access the access token from. Where's our files? We'll return token access token. Is this moaning at me? Handle record creation? We'll find out in a second. Could not check compatibility between personal access token resource pages, create personal access token, and the same thing on create record because model is not available. So we'll type in that differently and that'll be fine. Contravariants, covariants, so personal access token extends model somewhere, so we're allowed to use it as a return type because it also implements or has the same interface as model, as far as type checking goes anyway. Everything that you can do with model, you can do on personal access token, so we're allowed to return it like that. So that will create the token. For now, let's just dd token plain text token. And in the resource, we can add a field, which for now is just going to be a text input called name. And that's going to be required. My personal site. And there's our token. Let's have a look. So that plain text token is going to be the token the user has to send in the authorization header. Now, ideally, what we do is display a modal that says, here's your new token, do something with it. Because at the minute it just redirects you here. Yeah, we kind of want to say, get to this point, and throw up a modal that says, here's your new token. So could we save it to the session? Probably could. Token plain text. So that would happen just for the next request. And then here we can do token, access token, get key, token. And then in edit personal access token, when we mount, we can do before fill actually. So these call hook methods will go away. We'll call the method, so we can say here public function before fill, and if we dd inside of this, or dd session this record get key dot underscore token, it'll be null right now, but if we create another token, it will be in the session. So we can say if this key exists in the session, or if it's not null, then throw up a modal to say, here is your new access token, save it somewhere secure because you won't be able to access it again. So we'll say if token is null, just return. Otherwise, throw up a modal. Now, how can we do the modal part? That's going to be interesting. So if we head back over to Filament, Laravel Filament, and the admin package, resources, views, components, modal. Open event name is going to be open modal. We're going to have an ID on the modal. Yeah, this is exactly what we want. Exactly what we want. So we're getting deep into sort of custom filament stuff right now. It'd be really cool if I can build an entire SaaS with only one view. Edits. Token modal.blade.php. I think we're going to get this done and call it an evening, call it a night. So in the resource, we can do components, view, view field, make modal, hidden or visible when the Livewire component, this is Livewire. When the Livewire component is an instance of edit record or edit personal access token. So view must not be accessed before initialization. That is because I've not given it the name of the view. View field, extends field. Right, yeah, it uses set or view. How does this work? Field. I can't for the life of me remember. I was the one that actually contributed this in V1. Forms. Available field types. This will be a view field, and we have to set the view like that. That is perfectly acceptable. So view is going to be filament.personal access tokens. And if we refresh this page, we don't have a label, which is fine. But if we go to the create, it's also not going to be anywhere in the source. Only when we edit one. And just for now, let's just test this by doing a DD. That is fine. And if we go to the create one, it's not there. Perfect. We also need to use this, which is going to be filament modal. So x filament modal. Yep, that is right. What do we get? What do we get? What do we get? Why is the modal heading being used here? Well, we'll nab that anyway. That's fine. The ID is going to be equal to, I need to remember now, do we have the record at this point? Is it this record? Yep. So ID is going to be equal to this record get key, token modal, ID there. We can bind ID to this, and there was an event, open event name. is open modal. That's fine. So over in edit personal access token, we can just say your access token. And say this dispatch browser event open modal. And the ID will be this record get key dot token modal. The only thing I'm worried about here is I've got a feeling this is gonna conflict somewhere else. So we will just do it like this and do dot heading. That seems to work. So if we create a new one, testing, did the event not get dispatched? That is interesting. Do we get to this point? Let's just DD test. So we'll create another one. We do get to that point. Does Livewire not dispatch browser events on page load? I could have sworn it did. Because it adds it to the dispatch queue. Have I typed everything right? Open modal. And if we look back at that filament file, open event name, open modal. X on open modal dot window. That is the wrong modal. It will be in here. In here. No. In here. If event.detail.id equals 6 token modal, that is what we are dispatching. Interesting. Let's just comment all of that out for now. And just do div xdata x on open modal dot window console dot log open. Yeah, there's like some weird precedent stuff going on, I'm guessing. So what we can do instead is why don't we it's kind of annoying that we can't set is open to true initially. If we could say is open true and then just conditionally render it based on whether or not there is a session key, that would be a lot better. All right, let's hack our way around this for now. Let's keep this as it is. And instead of doing that, let's just wrap this all in session, this record, get key, token. and then x init. We actually want this to come after, so div x init window, or we can just do dispatch open modal with an ID of wire.record. No, not wire.record. It's just JSON encode this record get key token modal. Let's see if that does the trick. So right now there's no token. Aha, there we go. That worked. Awesome. Okay, so we've tricked the system a little bit there with some precedence problems, but it does the job. So it does the heading for us. So we can get rid of that and instead bind heading and just say your access token, and in the slot, we'll just get rid of this for now whilst we're figuring out the content. We can say your new access token is blah blah blah. Okay, cool. So we've got the heading, and yeah, we pass through heading. And then do we have clipboard access? I don't know if the package uses clipboard or if it's just the admin panel. Let's have a look. Package.json. No, we do not. In which case, let's get my clipboard package. Grab this, and then in our app service provider we can say Filament register scripts, and we can just test this with some X init magic. So with any luck, that should have... clipboard is not defined. That's because it adds it to the end of the body. But we need it just before Alpine. Instead of after, because Alpine's going to be included here, I guess. We want it to be just before. It's slightly annoying. Not to worry, I'm sure we can find a way around that. What was it? Layout, space. Get scripts. Yeah, so the Filament script's being added there. Interesting. You know, ideally we'd get this in before Alpine. Because at the minute it doesn't work. Do we just YOLO it and not use my package? Probably. So what do we want to say? We want to say please save the token below in a secure place. You will not be able to access it again. And then we'll just do a pre code, and we'll just echo out token. And why don't we actually just do x on or x on click dot prevent. It's kind of weird, but window dot navigator. Is it navigator? I can't even remember. 1 million hits per month. That's pretty cool. Yeah, navigator.clipboard dot write text, and we'll just do JSON encode token. Token's not actually going to be set, and the pre-code isn't going to have any styling either. But if we just do test, yeah, no styling on this. Does Filament have any cool little components for it? No. The doc site does. Docs. There we go. I guess there's an X code. No, there's not. Docs. Components. Is it in the CSS? Of course, it's going to be using the prose styling, which is fine. We can just wrap this in prose. That'll be fine. See what that looks like. Kind of overflows. That's going to be because of all of this white space. So just whack it on one line. Create another token. And if I... Okay, that did copy it. We probably want to throw up a little notification. Which we can do. There is a, not here, it will be page, no, there's one somewhere that will do a, yeah, we do have notify. So from here, do dot then wire dot notify success, and then give it a message token copied successfully. How does this look? Does that even work? Component method not found. That's because it's not defined on the base class. That is on page, and it's also not public. Token copied, and then we can just do it from here. We can just say this notify success, token copied to clipboard successfully. So let's create another test token. And I forgot to update in here, so this will be wire dot token copied. Let's create one more. That closes the modal though, which we don't want. Another spam message, nice. Let's remove that. Yeah, that closes the modal, which is happening because the $wire.token copy call is going to re-render the entire page, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm just like the spam attractor. I have no idea. There's obviously something with my stream that causes people to spam it. No idea. Modal. I bet that doesn't have a wire ignore, does it? No, it does not. So we want that to have a wire ignore in this case, which we can do. So if I put wire ignore here, that's not going to... That didn't do anything. Wire ignore equals wire ignore. Yeah, if I click on that, it's re-rendering the view and it no longer has the session. So instead, let's do something like this. Let's say public show token modal equals false. And this show token modal is going to be equal to, if it's not equal to null, and then this can just be if this show token modal get plain text token property this token good. The modal shows, but I didn't update this, so this will be return session get this record get key dot token, and that will be cached as well, so the next time we access that, token copied, which is good. We can click outside. There we go. We've got a little token modal. Can we make that modal a little bit wider? Width is SM by default, but where does $width get used? Let's do MD. So we'll do width equals MD, remove the wire ignore. Try one more time. Test. It's a little bit better. Oh, the token disappears there. Test. Copy the token. Okay, in which case let's do a wire ignore on the pre. Test. There we go. That's better. So we can copy that as many times as we want, and we can verify that's in there, just like that. Awesome. Cool. It's pretty successful. Shame you can't have decent bots like on Twitch to auto remove them. Yeah. I wonder if, I mean, the big streamers must have something like that, right? It's either that or they have like mods on every time they stream. I can report them. Spam? Yeah, if I report them, then it might do something. If YouTube listen to reports, I don't know. Cool, so that seemed to work fine. So we've got our little API tokens. If we go back to the resource and just put tables, columns, text column, make name, and let's do personal access token latest. First, that'll be Laravel Sanctum. Last used at as well, which is super. Last used at. Last used at. It's going to be a date time. And if one of those gets used, then it will show up there. They must have something like Nightbot or Stream Elements, I guess. Yeah, that would make a lot of sense. Cool. So we made quite a bit of progress, to be fair. We've got some CRUD sources. We've got tokens. We wrote some tests for our source resource, which again is a mouthful to say. In the next one, we'll write some tests for these tokens, perhaps, and we'll start planning out the data storage. In terms of what I want the API to look like, ideally, if we had a PHP package for this, you'd be able to say something like kernel kernel send, and then the name or like the label for your widget. So you might be able to say number of users. And then we might have like query, where you give it a query. So you might do this, or you could say count user class, or you could provide a data callback like this and just return the count yourself. And then what would happen in the background, this would send an API request to kernel using your API token as well as your source ID / UUID. Kernel would encrypt the data to begin with, so going to finally be given a Filament a go on a new project. Looks ideal so far. Yeah, Filament's wicked. So I was a long time user of Nova as well. I still have projects out there using Nova. The one thing that bugs me about Nova is the customization. If you want to add a custom field, then you need Vue. Whereas with Filament, it's Blade. You haven't even really got to think about the Livewire stuff. It's really just Blade. Livewire is more of the data transfer stuff. Actually, creating a field is quite simple, and Filament provides all of those hooks and such to make it really simple. So that's one of my favorite things. It's open source, so we've got loads of contributors. Nova's a great product, but customization and stuff like that, Filament is definitely the winner for me personally. Everyone has their own opinion, but for me personally, Filament is my go-to, and I'm slightly biased because have contributed a lot to the project. I won't say I necessarily maintain it, because Dan does a lot of work, but I've been heavily involved with it. So I'm not into Vue, so Nova has always been tricky for me. Yeah, that's the other thing. If you're a Laravel developer, you don't necessarily know Vue. I believe Nova 4 is an inertia app. I think it uses inertia and Vue. So that might change customization wise, but really it's still, you need to know Vue. If you're a React dev or a Svelte dev or a tool stack dev, Nova is inaccessible customization wise. Not a bad thing, but if you're a Laravel dev, you probably know Blade. If you know Blade, you can customize Filament quite easily. But anyway, before we finish, so send API request to kernel. The kernel would then encrypt the data and store against the source. Kernel finds all bits of data for a source and figures out how best to display them. James says, used to use Nova as a CMS on most projects, now moved over to Filament for the customization and less hackiness. Yeah, fair enough. You know, if Nova works for you, Nova works for you. Like, Nova's not a bad product by any means. It's really successful. It's first party as well. The fact that Taylor and the rest of the team, like David and everyone else, they provide that as a Laravel product is amazing. There's not many other ecosystems that do that. You know, it's going to be supported for as long as Laravel exists, unless there's a good reason to deprecate Nova and bring on something else. It will exist. It's reliable. You know, Filament's not going anywhere either. We all use it. I use it for my work, so Dan uses it for his work, and loads of other people use it. But if Nova works for you, it works for you. If Filament works for you, great. Filament works for you. That's really good. If a Bootstrap 4 theme that you plug and play with works, also great. You know, use whatever you're comfortable with. Kernel finds all bits of data for a source and figures out how best to display them. User logs into kernel and sees the dashboard with all of their stats. You know, that's the basic idea. We might do something else where you can say send users, or you could say number of users again, but instead you send a chart across and you say for the last 7 days, let's just do 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13 Fibonacci sequence. You know, for the last 6 days, these have been the number of users, and then we output a graph instead of a number counter. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. We've got to build the API first. This is just what the PHP API might look like. And if it's a Laravel package, even better, because then we can handle the API token and the source ID. You might need to say something like kernel source, and then do all of your stuff down here instead. But yeah, this is my ideal API, bit of documentation driven design. But yeah, let's just make sure our tests are passing. Yeah, we've only got 3, that's fine. Better than none. So we've built a sources resource that you can create and list. And we also hacked together our own little Sanctum support for Filament, which might make a really nice plugin, actually. If we add permissions to it, so you can like check what permissions you want on your API token, that'd be even cooler. But for now, it's just a plain token. So I'm gonna call it a night there. Thank you all for dropping by. Looks like we've got like around 10 people here still, which is cool. Yeah, thank you all for dropping by. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I will speak to you on Twitter or in the next live stream. Yeah. Cheers, guys.